Guys who got told no during a failed marriage proposal. What happened afterwards? Story 1. My mom's boyfriend proposed to her 3 months into dating. She was 40, had one disastrous marriage and subsequent divorce under her belt by that time, and felt like it was too soon in the relationship to be talking marriage. He accepted her no, but said he wouldn't ask again, and he hasn't. They've been together 25 plus years now and never married. Story 2. I had a foreign student at my university I'd only spoken to on the phone a few times, and whom I'd never met call my father on Christmas morning of my freshman year. He asked my dad for my hand in marriage. They talked for ages, and my stupid father said yes. He was so out of touch with my life, he assumed the guy was my boyfriend. My dad thought I'd be thrilled. The idiot. Story 3. We'd been joking around about it for months. I'd ask sarcastically in the most unromantic way. She'd say no, we'd laugh and move on with our day. I'd apparently conditioned her so well that when I asked for real, she flippantly turned me down, and everyone around me either gasped or got this real awkward look on their face. She changed her tune shit quick when she actually looked and saw me holding the ring. We've been married 17 years now. Good times. Story 4. Not my own experience, but I was in the restaurant when a failed proposal happened. Somehow the guy was able to get the families involved in this fancy dinner without the girl's knowledge as to what was going to happen. He orders their drinks, where he had the ring cleaned, and then placed at the bottom of her pina colada drink. She gets up and goes to the bathroom, and that's when some of her family moved in close with their cameras, phones ready for the proposal. She comes back and the drinks are brought. She refuses the drink, much to his dismay, but doesn't get the hint. She doesn't want it. You should have your drink, it's really good. She again says no. This goes on, back and forth. Finally she says no and is disturbed by his pushy behavior. I hear this from my table. I can't marry someone who won't respect my boundaries. She gets up and walks out of the restaurant. The guy sits there waiting for her to cool off. She doesn't come back in, so he fishes out the ring and has the drinks taken away. She comes back in near the end and he shows her the ring, tells her it was in the drink, and she slaps him and says no. This time she is angry and leaves. Everyone packs up and heads to pay. He just sits there by himself. I wanted to get up and say something, but my date was ready to go home. Story 5. I proposed to my girlfriend at a family gathering, and she said no. It was a tough moment for both of us, but we sat down and had a long, honest conversation about our relationship. We realized that we had been drifting apart for a while, and that the proposal brought those issues to the surface. We decided to break up and focus on our own personal growth. It was painful at the time, but looking back, it was the right decision for both of us. Story 6. Not a guy, but a girl. I asked my boyfriend to marry me. I didn't do a whole scene about it. We were talking, and I said that I wanted to get married and I felt ready for it, and he just said no. I was mad. He had never mentioned this, and we've talked about it before. All he had ever said was that he didn't want it because it was expensive and didn't want a big party. And so, in my understanding, we would get married at the courthouse and have a small gathering with family and close friends. Then I found out he didn't want to get married because his parents had a divorce, and he didn't want to go through that. It took a while to unravel all his issues with marriage. At a certain point, I said I'm not going to wait around with a guy that doesn't want to get married. I had always been very clear about wanting to get married. He disagreed and said I've also mentioned that I didn't want a big wedding. I'm like, what? We realized we were both talking about different things. He had put together marriage and the wedding, and I wasn't. Still, obviously, it wasn't solved right then and there. I gave him some time to think. After like a month, I came back to the subject and he asked me why I wanted to get married. And I talked about all the laws that protect the couple in the eventuality of disease and death, in owning property, in security if we had children, etc. He suddenly just said, "Oh, I didn't know about that, then yeah, we'll get married then." We've been happily married for 5 years. Almost every day he says he's so happy being married to me and that his wedding day was one of the happiest of his life. Story 7. Was with a girl for a couple years. I started talking about getting married. She was up for it, but kind of distant about it. I take her out ring shopping and she breaks down, tells me she can't marry me. I was really confused. I thought things were going great. Turns out I was just the guy taking care of her until her ex gets out of prison. I paid for her schooling, helped her get off drugs. We were looking at houses. I thought we were making a life together. She left me not long after that. He got out of prison a few months later. She went back to stripping. I ran into them a few times. I guess she's happy. Story 8. Technically, she said yes, but then we went to surprise her family with the good news, and her parents immediately told us to break it off. She was not going to spend her entire remaining life with a black man. We just broke up and moved on. I found a way better girl from a non-racist family. We're married with 3 kids now and doing great. Ex is a drug addict in Kentucky, but at least she's married to a white man, living paycheck to paycheck. Story 9. Not the guy here, but the naysayer. He had just finished a 1,000-mile solo cycling tour, and I met him at the finish. I was so caught up in his achievement that I did not see the proposal coming, and I was shocked. So I told him right there, "I love you, but I can't give you an answer right now." Of course, there were tears, and we both called family members and then continued on our planned holiday. We had such a good time on our holidays and were able to enjoy each other's company like normal. So I figured that if we can handle this bump in the road this well, we are a great team. And at the end of the holiday, I told him I would love to marry him. That was 7 years ago, and I haven't regretted my decision for a second. I simply needed time to process a life-changing choice, and my partner was mature enough to understand this. Story 10. My friend proposed once and she said no. It was very early in their relationship. She said she only feels comfortable marrying him if he bought a house first. 10 years later, he's afraid to ask her again, because she has a standard of how she wants to be proposed, with a fireworks show, a tropical beach area with all her friends watching, and a big diamond-size ring, like the videos she's seen on TikTok. But now all of her friends are getting married around her, so she now wants him to propose again. It's a weird waiting game for the both of them. Story 11. Guys, if you're reading this thread and want one strong takeaway from it, always talk to your significant other and make sure they want to marry you before proposing. I know the movies from the old days make it seem like it should be a surprise, but it really shouldn't be. It should be something you've been talking about for a while, and it should come after you have had multiple talks about your future together. No one likes to have to devastate someone, and a lot of hurt feelings can be avoided by communication. Let the moment that you propose be a surprise, but the fact that you would propose at all be pre-established. Story 12. I got everything ready and she said no, at least not right now, and it sort of muted the rest of the weekend. Several people heard I was going to ask and congratulated me the next week. It was surreal informing them she said no. It should have been a wake-up call to just end it there, but neither of us wanted to. We were our first everything, and we had a lot of history. I guess I thought it would just work out, but her reservations on being married at that time never really went away. I admitted that both of us wanted exclusive things. Our lives were headed towards opposite directions, and compromise just meant someone was going to be resentful. When we started dating, both of us really helped each other out in a lot of areas and through some really challenging times. But we learned, later on, that things that were great then may not be great now. Both of us were good people, but some things just have a lifespan. We got what we needed, and it was time for the next phase of our lives, alone. A huge part of successful marriages requires compromise on small issues. But some issues have no compromise. It's okay to fight for things if there's a way that both of you can get what you want, and there's no shame in letting things go if there's nothing more than can be done. We broke up 7 or so months later. Restarting life, for what was the second time for me, was tough, because I was also going through a lot of other things and she wasn't able to be there anymore. The same thing was happening on her end, so it just kinda ended there. We both dated other people and got married to others eventually, so in the super longer term it was all okay. Story 13. I used to date a guy who was in a band that had a bit of a cult following. They agreed to never let someone propose from stage again after an incident where a dude proposed on stage, and she said yes. But everyone could tell it was a no. He showed up at a show a few months later, single. They said it was a big vibe killer for the show. Story 14. Asked this girl to marry me and she said no because I didn't ask her right. I don't know exactly why, but it didn't bother me much. We had a strange history and it just seemed like par for the course. About a year later, I met someone else and we will be celebrating 31 years in a few weeks. Sometimes things do work out for the best. Story 15. My dad proposed to my mom 3 times. She laughed each time and took the ring all 3 of them. They have been living miserably together ever since. I'm 31 now. They built a separate living room and avoid each other. My dad says he regrets it to this day. My dad is a wonderful man, and every time I asked why he stayed with that wretched woman, he would say, "Because she's your mother." He never goes into any more detail. If she says no, just move on. Story 16. I am a woman, but I spent a year asking my boyfriend to marry me on a regular basis. I'd say, "Want to get married?" And he'd say yes, and I'd say, "Can I tell my parents?" And he'd say no, a straight-up year. Until finally we went on a little trip a couple hours from our apartment, and he whipped out the letters he'd exchanged with my parents about wanting to propose. Just had our 6th anniversary. Story 17. Not my story, but told from our jeweler when we were buying our wedding bands. So a guy comes in to buy an engagement ring. The jeweler sits down with him to talk about design, cost, and what have you. Our jeweler always asks people about how they are going to propose. She likes to share in the excitement. The guy brags about how he is going to propose to his GF at a ball game, on the big screen in front of the entire stadium while his favorite team plays. As the guy is speaking, our jeweler notices that everything is centered around the guy. From the ring to the proposal. No mention of what his GF likes. Our jeweler gets a bad feeling, but she sells him the ring. Not long after the guy comes back in with the ring, the GF said no, which really didn't surprise the jeweler. Story 18. My wife said yes, but I was still waiting for the other shoe to drop up until the wedding day. She had rejected 2 men before me on marriage proposals and had told me she was a bit of a commitment phobe. Her matron of honor slept over the night before the wedding and slept by the front door to make sure my wife didn't leave during the night, and if she did, to call me and let me know what happened so I could enact my backup plan. I had a backup plan in case she pulled a runner at the ceremony. She almost didn't go in on the day of. I was prepared just in case. Then she showed up, we got married, and just celebrated our 10-year anniversary. She still breaks out in hives and has mini freakouts when she realizes how long we've been together despite having 2 kids, a house, mortgage, etc. For those of you guys dealing with commitment phobes, tell them what you've got planned. I let my wife know months ahead of time that I was planning on proposing and gained insights that if I were going to do it, that it had to be a certain way. Never propose in public unless your girlfriend is into that. Also make sure that if you're going to propose, she's aware, and that you know with certainty that's what she wants. Communicate, people. It isn't that hard. Story 19. Not a guy, but I set things up to be perfect. The 2 of us totally alone at sunset on a Sicilian beach, and he said no out of pure shock. He'd always expected that it would be him asking me, not the other way round. Then, his brain kind of caught up with what was going on, and he was horrified at himself for just saying no like that. He told me of course he wanted to marry me, and he hadn't meant no as in he didn't want to marry me. It was more like, no way did you just ask me that, but it came out wrong. We both agreed that this wasn't the proposal we'd both want to remember forever, so we'd do it again properly some other time. 9 months later, he proposed to me on my birthday in one of my favorite spots. To his relief, I didn't say no, and we've now been married 10 years. Story 20. My girlfriend and I were walking around our old Ivy League campus when I popped the question. Pulled my late mother's ring out of my wallet, but she said no. My sister had splashed out on a nice bottle of champagne and everything. I booked the night train back home. Didn't want to be around bustling crowds after having my heart shattered, although the silent sleepers might have been worse. Anyway, I found the real thing instead, who patched up the tapestry that she had shred. Story 21. Not me, but a proposal I saw. I was vacationing in Las Vegas back in 2006 with my then family. We took in a show a day on the trip. The day after Christmas, we saw a magic show. About halfway through the performance, the magician had a young woman from the audience come up and assist with some trick. He did the meet and greet with her. She was on a vacation with her boyfriend's family and blah blah. The magician does his thing, and then suddenly the boyfriend appears out some box that deceptively empty just a second ago. The boyfriend goes down on his knee, out comes the ring, and he goes into his declarations of love and affection and rehash the last few years. It was a sweet proposal. She smiles and clasps her hands in front of her face and says, "Absolutely nothing." We in the audience are all silent and waiting to cheer and applaud, but waiting for her to say yes. It seemed like an eternity, but then the magician burst out with applause. He quickly guided the happy couple off the stage and announced, "She said yes!" So we all cheered for the happy couple. What else was he going to do? They had great seats at a table, center stage, and down in the front, where we could see the happy couple and family. The poor girl sat by herself, and the dude huddled with his parents at the other side. I don't think they talked at all the rest of the show. Story 22. An ex, who had been a strange combination of crack addict, stripper, and accountant, proposed to me while we were on MDMA. I said that I'd like to answer the question when I wasn't high. I guess her trip went south, and she dumped me 2 days later. Can't say I've any regrets as far as she is concerned. I did have a weird moment with another proposal. I had found the love of my life, but we'd only been together about 6 months when I proposed. She said yes, but afterwards her energy got all weird, and she admitted it felt rushed. I felt really hurt. but said we could have a redo when she was ready. Luckily, things worked out. We did marry and have had a solid marriage for the last 8 years.